What is up, Easy Reaction fans? I am back today with another Creepypasta reaction. Today we're going to be doing Anasi's Goatman story from Mr. Creepypasta. This is one of his most popular stories he's ever done on the channel. And this is one that's stuck with me for a long time. I really love the sound effects in this one and the whole atmosphere the story builds. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it.
Here's my story. 16. Black and have a family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers they put out in the woods for hunting and camping. Down south, cousin suggests that we go there to camp. Now, I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to camp out for a few days. We go to the camp and it's obvious something is wrong. Air has this weird electric smell, like right before a storm, like ozone. And we think nothing of it, unpack, and go down to a little creek to swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager come out of the bushes. He has a shotgun in the crook of his arm and says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and say that we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together. There was a big animal in the woods. His son, who's my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay. So, we end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's the white kid, Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys, so we're all around 15 or 17. We ended up just dicking the whole day away. So, we head back to the camp and pulling out some stuff for a campfire, even though the trailers both had kitchenettes. Well, Tanner says that his family property sits up against my uncle's. He wants to run home and ask his dad if he can come out camping with us. And my cousin Rooster says that he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. Well, it's about 7 o'clock, and it's starting to get pretty dark. They take flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property. The rest of us chill. We make s'mores, drink, kiss on the girls. About 30 or 40 minutes later, there's the smell of ozone again. And you could smell it over the smell of the fire that we had started, and this really nasty coppery like smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it stopped. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that nasty metallic back of your throat smell. We immediately think that it's some kind of electric malfunction or someone left a hot plate on or some shit. So we reach the trailers and nothing's on. We can all smell it. All of a sudden we hear people booking down the path towards us, and Rooster, Tan, and the girl all come running into the clearing out of breath, and they don't even break stride. They all run right into the trailer, right by where the fire is. We all got the fuck out of there and get to the trailers. Well, they end up calming down. Even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. All the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it, and are about to go inside to get the generator out of the shed between the trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no. Lock the front door, ain't nobody else getting outside. He's been crying too, and his eyes are bloodshot and puffy, and his pants are as dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that they went up to his house, and his father said sure he could go out camping, but to make sure that they were careful on the way back, and that maybe they should take one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Hunter had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had come up ripped up and half-eaten, so they assumed that it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they didn't usually fuck with live animals. He'd gone upstairs, packed his stuff, and told his dad that they'd be okay without the rifle because coyotes avoid people. So, they started walking back towards where we were camping. So Rooster finally stopped crying and shaking, and the girl already had, but she was just staring out the window with a dumb look on her face. Then he says but they had gotten halfway into the woods toward the camp when they started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off the trail, and they all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing back in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster said that they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realized that the guy was facing away from them. So they keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppering ozone smell, and they say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and it's a dude standing in the forest, backwards, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, I should have taken the fucking rifle. And as they're telling their story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, the kind of low gibbering had started coming from out of both sides of the woods. They started booking it back to the trailer. The girl said that she had flashed her flashlight out into the woods to the side of them, and they had seen something jerking itself through the woods, and the gibbering just got louder and louder. And when they could see the light from out of the campfire, something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track, and they had just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out of the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point it's some rednecks or some shit trying to fuck with us. And all of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid that was telling him about the Goatman or some shit. We promptly tell him to shut the fuck up, because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman, and how we're in his woods, and blah, blah, blah. Now, at this time, I had never heard of a Goatman or any of that, but a couple years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I met him for a roommate, and I ended up asking him about it. And to sum it up, it's basically a fucking guy with the head of a goat and can shapeshift, and he gets among groups of people to terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like the Wendigo, and it's bad mojo to even talk about it, and well, it's even worse when you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going, the Goatman's going to get in and fucking get us. And the girls are all terrified. My cousins and I are all fucking trying to figure out if it's just some hillbillies or some animal. So all of a sudden, the smell goes away. Like, to this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Like, usually the smell fades away or gets less. It just literally was there 1 second and not the next. So after an hour, making it around 9 or 10, we stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stoke the fire again. We figured it was just some asshole trying to fuck with us. So we don't go back home, because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. Nothing else weird happens that night. And we stay another night. And for the main part of the night, nothing happens. About 1 in the morning, we're outside getting drunk and telling ghost stories. And someone is finishing some too spooky story. I don't remember what about. But the smell comes back. And it's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up and you can actually feel how clammy the air is. And I say that we should go inside. This isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around, and my cousin just keeps going on about how it's the Goatman, and my cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up. All the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting there for a while, and the smell is just as strong, and we're terrified and all huddled in this camper, and we end up cooking broths for everyone because nobody wants to go outside. It's one of those packs with 4 broths in a pack that we had a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everyone a hot dog. I get mine. And after a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pot to get another one. He starts grumbling about how the fuck do I get 2 and everybody else gets 1. And I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everyone got one because there's 12 brats. If you wanted more, you should open up a new pack and cook some more. And that's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get out!" She screams and shivers, and when it dawns on the cousin standing up, what the fuck is wrong, me and him both glance around the room, and I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin. The girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everyone books out of the cabin. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck is wrong, and I start counting us. And there's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everyone didn't really know each other well, nobody had really noticed the whole fucking time, but there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around having a good time, you don't sweat the small stuff. You don't always keep track of certain stuff. But I'm dead sure that someone else had been in that trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day eating with us. And what makes it worse, I could figure out which one, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person. Goatman. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside, and eventually we get big ass sticks and go back into the cabin, and there's nobody there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back to the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened, and the girl says that she realized too, and that's when he was about to say something. The person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard, leaned over toward her, and said something that she couldn't understand. So we all pretty much scared as fuck, and we huddled together, and then I fall asleep. And when I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep, and then half are packing our shit up. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up. And some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailers. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kira. The one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked her if she really thinks there was something bad. And she says that she just wants to go home. She doesn't want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up, and the 4 that want to go can go. And then I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin, and it's my uncle's, and I have to lock up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking the shit seriously, and I definitely don't want to be out here in the woods for another night. So I spend the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls, 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. And Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says that he's going to be back. So there are 7 of us left. This is about 4 p.m. Around 5, he hasn't made it back yet, and we're extremely fucking antsy, and the only reason I stopped begging them to go was because he went to get a gun. It's about 5:30 or so, when the cousin that did stay says that the girl Kira is outside. We all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. I'm thinking to myself, she was so fucking scared. Why the fuck did she come back? And I get this antsy feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time, the coppery smell has been gone, but now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them, and everybody. These are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, are laughing at me and asking me, did I set this up to scare them? And I'm looking at them like I am not fucking bullshitting you at all right now. I asked them, why the fuck would I play like that? So, one of the girls goes outside to get Kira. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kira starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like, if somebody was with their back turned and was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that I that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like later in September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but it was super chilly some days too, and you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chittering. So I step out of the door and tell her to come back in the fucking trailer right damn now. She backs up to the trailer. We lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except for one and put a guy there in a chair to watch her. And she stands there for another 20 minutes or so. The guy turns to say that she's still there. And there's this huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck up and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is so fucking loud. He looks around the room and then gets super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know, there's only 7 of us in here, right?" And I get this feeling where my stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer when we were sorting out who was going where, and then when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it just slipped right back in there. We looked out the window and there was nobody out there. So we recount everybody, and basically I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and they all say 8. Well, how many are here now? And they all count and then realize that there's only 7 people in the cabin. So Tan had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo as well. And he told us that his dad, that there had been some kind of animal in the forest, because he didn't think his dad would have believed him if he said that it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours, and that in the morning we could all go back to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now, I'm really fucking terrified. But I at least feel better because we can all be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is that comes back. But then my cousin gets into this huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks that I'm trying to be funny and prank them, and that she's getting really scared and that I'm not funny. And he keeps telling her that I'm not the kind of guy, and she says, well, how do we know that the girl wasn't just Tanner in a wig? Or if it's really the Goatman, how do we know that this is the real Tanner and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we fucking get into a huge argument about this, where me and Tan are just like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least someone has to be sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst it's something bad in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying that she wants to go right now, and we're all trying to tell her it's no fucking go because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night, and at this point the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn on the radio for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent, so we turn it off. At around the time that Tan's cousin shows up, he was like 19, I think. Well, at this point, the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin. He says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp and then walks in. He kind of glances at us and looks a little confused. He asks where your other little buddy is at. I figured that she would meet up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something? And he also asks whether we had been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like bloody and hot pans all the way up the trail, and we were all just like, fucking nope. But we all asked him what the fuck he's talking about with the girl he saw, and he had come down the same trail that Tan had been using, that he had come up on one of your guys' buddies, standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. And he had asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was just look at him, and then she smiled at him, and he said that he kept walking, but she couldn't seem to keep up with him. He kept lagging a little bit behind. He said that he asked her if she was hurt or something, and did she need any help, but she continued to stare, and eventually he had been walking and turned around a bend in the trail, but when he turned around and went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He'd assumed that she had taken some shortcut through the woods to our trailers. I tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expect him to say that we're full of shit, but he just listened and then sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says when she had kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him the fuck out, so he tried to keep her in front of him. No matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little bit behind. And that she smiled this nasty smile, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. He said eventually it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and he had turned, and she had been right the fuck up on him, and he stepped back from her. It was at this point that he asked her if she was okay, and if she wanted him to carry her back the rest of the way, and she just kept staring. He said that he reached out for her, as in to grab her on the shoulder, but he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we know this shit's real unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. So, they load up the rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. And to this fucking day, every time I think about this, I really pray to God that it's just some huge prank that my cousins played on me and just never revealed. So I would just shit for the rest of my life. At around 11, the stink of copper turns into an actual nasty, gross blood smell, like cooking blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin Reese get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There was like a half knocking, half clawing at the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice, and it sounds like when you see those YouTube cats and dogs whose owner teaches them how to talk, and it says in this halting, weird tone voice, "Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing." It made a fucking chill creep up against my body. One of the girls just starts crying and calling on Jesus, and it was so fucking obviously not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. And that's some shit that I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm to talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence and rhythm. YouTube those cats. That's what the fuck it sounded like outside the door. So now I'm in full-on terror mode, and we keep yelling outside, "Who is it? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In," or "Let me the fuck in," for almost 15 minutes. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can't imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So then the smell goes away after a while. And for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around the woods and shit. And every couple of minutes, it goes back to the door and says something. And finally, when the smell fades away, it's around 2 a.m. He says, "Man, fuck this," and opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." And he fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river across from where the river is, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. Then it starts screaming, and it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that. And you can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires over into it, and the tree line, it starts backing into the house, and we lock the door, and we can all hear this shit keening and screaming. And Reese says something that had come out of the bushes, super low to the ground, crawling towards the cabin, and he had shot at it. And pretty much, that's how the rest of the night went. It literally was screaming constantly for the next 2 hours. We could hear the shit moving around into the tree line, but it never came back to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. man had been sitting at the chair watching the door with his rifle, and nobody else heard or saw it. And he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over, he said that he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises had finally stopped, and he had been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and then lay down on the floor and go to sleep. And he just assumed it was one of us, and he had nodded off. Then he said he kind of realized something was wrong, and while pretending to be asleep, he counted us. 5, 6, 7, 8. There were 9 people in the cabin. He basically didn't want to try to shoot at the fucking thing in the cabin and have it kill us. Or have Reese wake up and start shooting and then we kill ourselves. So he just stayed awake all night pretending not to be asleep. He said sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittery thing or heave like it was laughing. But then it would lay back down. Now the story kind of closes pretty weak, right? Because from my perspective, nothing happened. We woke up and I noticed that Tan was a little jittery and that he was avoiding looking at us. We ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. And he stayed last in the cabin and said that he'd lock up and bring me my uncle's keys to just start walking and he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. But we got a little up the path and then he came running up and basically we just jogged back to his house and his cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and look in there. He said there was a window. That we were too stupid to lock that and that there was no screen on it and the window was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing that he had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then getting in among us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to his house. And then he said it lagged to the back of the group and then it looked him dead in the eyes. And then it walked into the woods.
Yeah, that story is just always bone chilling. I really love it. Kind of wish there was like animations of these that they do late years on. I know he updated his with this one, but this, like the old style to me, it's just like way. It makes it seem more realistic, realistic, or just like a story that's lived in more than the updated stuff. So, yeah. How long is this video so far? 28 minutes. I think I can fit in another one. We'll see. Let's do. My dog was lost for 3 days.
How to keep your hair looking like you just...
My dog was lost for 3 days.
As a kid, I was raised in a small fishing community on the eastern side of Canada, surrounded by the Gulf of St. Lawrence and Burl Forest. The entirety of the land was close to 4,000 foot square, with an even smaller number of residents sprawled out over Main Street, the main road running straight through our little town, and farming houses spread wide between areas of trees that were changed to domestic residential homes when agriculture stopped being profitable. In total, our community is surrounded by a vast expanse of ocean, and a seemingly endless barrage of trees that spread over 55% of Canada's entire country. I spent most of my life hunting in those woods, so you can imagine my joy when my parents got me a hunting dog. Sandy was a Shetland sheepdog, and while they were more fit to be herding and tracking sheep over grassy plains rather than rabbits and deers through dense forest, it didn't stop me from taking him with me on every excursion I possibly could. Sandy had been by my side for enough hunting trips that he'd grown accustomed to waking up just before breaking daylight, and on a few occasions, helped track down small game like squirrels and rabbits through considerably large areas of forest. Sandy wasn't my property, and wasn't treated like he belonged to me. Sandy was a member of the family, my best companion, and my truest friend. I think back on all the times he'd sit in the front seat of the truck without being told, ready to go for a walk in whatever part of the forest I told him to. I can honestly say there'll never be a dog that will fill the void Sandy left in my life. I find that dog lovers relate to that sentiment more than others. It was October 30th, the first day of deer hunting season. I had been talking with my family about taking Sandy, my hunting gear, and a few essentials to one of the cabins my grandfather owned in his heyday off an unmarked road a few hundred miles into the wilderness for a few days. This was met with a lot of protesting, but nothing could stop me from getting in some time looking for wild game in an area that wasn't already picked clean by illegal hunters earlier in the month. Everything was packed into the old blue Ford, Sandy included, and a few hours of driving later, we were setting up camp in one of my grandfather's secluded old cabins. Here's where things got fucked up. Sandy, I'm so sorry. I had spent most of the time of my life being in the wilderness. There were only a handful of times that things had gotten weird for me, but usually everything could be explained with scientific reason. That's why I brushed off Sandy's weirdness in the first few nights, chalking it up to the nervousness of a dog that's capable of hearing the far-off noises of various coyotes, wolves, bears, and moose. This was untouched territory, of course. There had been plenty of time for wildlife to set up camp here, too. The first night was fairly normal. I had set up Sandy's bed in the corner of the living room next to the TV that looked like it had come from the early 90s. I figured I'd give Sandy the option to have some place to lay down for a while, despite the fact that he slept curled up with me 9 times out of 10. Close to 10 at night, Sandy looked straight at the wooden door and whined. I figured he needed to piss and opened the door to let him out, not worried about having my best friend stray too far from me. Instead, he just sat inside the door, looking out at the forest edge beyond the path. I, too, stood and looked for a few minutes before deciding he had just heard an errant creature close to the cabin. The rest of the night was fairly normal, and Sandy slept with me fine. The second night, I chalked the weirdness up to Sandy's stress. Earlier that day, we had been walking a few miles through the woods beyond the house, and I thought I heard the sound of twigs cracking under something heavy. I hoped it wasn't a moose because my shotgun wouldn't have stood a chance, but something changed in Sandy that I didn't pay close attention to at the time. He hunched himself on his hind legs, his foot pressed close to the ground, his mouth pulled up over his teeth, and he growled towards nothingness. I figured we should try hunting later, if whatever it was had left, and should he be feeling up to it. But once we were inside, he didn't want to move. Even when I tried to get him up to go outside to do his business, he sat at the door and cried, wailing at me to let me know he didn't want to go out there. I didn't pressure him. If he pissed on the floor, so be it. Sandy never acted up before. I could excuse an accident or two if he really didn't want to be out there. It must have been a bear, I thought, before locking the door and calling it a night. The third night is where things went to hell, listeners. And I still don't fully understand what happened. Sandy didn't eat all day. I managed to shoot a rabbit in the early morning, and when Sandy decided he didn't want to be outside any longer than he had to, and retired inside for the day, I cooked it up, threw a little gravy on it, and gave it to my dog. I didn't do this all the time, but I figured now was a special occasion. Maybe a treat would put him in a better mood for another walk the next day. Sandy didn't touch it. He didn't so much as sniff it. Instead, he sat at my side on the couch, watching the doorway intently. I tucked him under my arms, and he laid his head on my lap, eyes still locked on the door. Close to 3 hours of watching grainy VHS tapes on an outdated television set, Sandy started crying, hugging himself close to my body. Now, this is where my judgment took me down the wrong path for the first time of many. It must sound silly being my dog's protector rather than my dog being mine, but this was my family. I figured if there was something out there that was scaring Sandy so bad, then it was my job to do something about it. I loaded my 410, opened the door, and stood in the doorway and waited. I must have waited at least a half hour staring into nothing. There was barely any sound save for the faint buzz of insects and leaves rustling in the cold autumn wind. Moose aren't elegant creatures, and if it were a moose, I would have heard it coming. Around the 40-minute mark, Sandy took off like a shot into the darkness of the trees beyond the path, barking wildly. I started to get worried. Despite my knowledge that my dog isn't entirely helpless in the wilderness, there was bigger animals that would have liked to take a bite out of him if there wasn't a lot of food for the winter. I heard Sandy's barks fade away into the distance.
When I was young, I was forced to live without my mother.
Come on, ads.
And then stop altogether. I waited hours, standing in the doorway with my shotgun cocked and ready to put down whatever it was that was waiting in the woods. I waited hours for Sandy to come back to the house. I waited until sun was cracking through the trees, and then I waited until that night, sitting on my porch step, feigning off sleep deprivation to see my dog come back. Sandy did come back. But not for another 3 days. Fog had rolled in at that point, and it was getting darker. The night painted the sky a navy blue. Tracking over the last few days proved futile, and I started to get worried that I need to leave and find more provisions to last me the next few nights. I couldn't leave Sandy up there, lost in the woods, cold and probably hungry. The thought that he might be waiting out there for me to find him and bring him back home was distressing enough. I was packing the bag that hung on the coat rack next to the door with what I'd need for the next day's trip. I figured tomorrow would be the last day before I'd go into town and see if my father would help me find Sandy. He was a retired graying man, but I was sure if I brought up Sandy's name, he'd be more than willing to help me search for him. Thankfully, Sandy came back before I'd even finished that train of thought. I saw him from the window on the porch that led down the main road a few dozen feet away from the house. Normally I'd hear him scamper up to the doorway and paw at the door a few times, eager to come in, but this was different. I could see the reflection of his eyes as green pearls in the murky fog that had swamped the house. For a moment, I thought it might be an animal, but the outline of his body in the wisps of thick, low-lying clouds was unmistakable. Still, despite myself, I hesitated. There was something different about his body language. I stared out the window for a few more moments before reason overcame my gut instinct. Sandy could be hurt, I thought. Or worse. I flung the doorway open, but he didn't come right away. Instead, he stood there, watching me intently. And when he didn't move, I whistled to him. "Here, Sandy." I coaxed him toward the house. "Here, boy." The way he moved was different. It was as though his hips had been dislocated and the angle of his paws changed direction with every step, as though he'd forgotten how to walk properly. His head was bowed to the ground, but his teeth weren't bared. He didn't seem aggressive. The only way I could describe the way he looked was sheepish. Like he just gotten into something he wasn't supposed to, and I yelled at him for it. I thought he might have hurt himself hopping up onto the elevated step if he dislocated his hips, but he did just fine. His back half swung a little, oddly enough, and his paws almost folded underneath himself, but he didn't go sprawling. He sat on the step and didn't take his look off me. It wasn't until I moved from the doorway completely, opened the door wide, and waited for him to walk in that he moved. Straight to his bed. He didn't stop at my hand and sniff at me. He didn't wait for pets or jump up on me like usual. He was straight to his bed, where he sat, and watched me for quite some time afterward. I returned to the movie at hand. I called him a few times, but he didn't respond. His ears didn't so much as raise to the sound of my voice, or the pat of my hand on the worn-out couch beside me. I had missed my buddy, but I wasn't about to move him physically toward me. There was something about him that said I shouldn't have let him in. But I chalked it up to silliness, and a few hours later I went to bed. The more I think back on it, I don't recall him blinking once. He sat there like a statue, and when I turned off the light, I could see the reflection of jade green following me as I went into my room and shut the door. Wait. I could have sworn I heard him walk in the night. The sound of nails clicking against the wooden floor coming up to the door of my room, but they were slow and deliberate. They weren't like the quickness of Sandy realizing I'd gone to bed and coming to curl up. I heard the noises stop outside of my bedroom, but I didn't hear his whine. I thought nothing of it and fell into a deep sleep. When I woke in the morning, I figured it must have been a dream. Sandy was still sitting in that upright position I left him in when I went to bed. It was as though he hadn't moved a muscle the entire night, and when I said good morning, he didn't so much as wag his tail. He did follow me into the kitchen, but he paused at the doorway when I put his bowl down on the floor and filled it up with supermarket dog food. Once again, his back half moved weirdly as he slowly made his way towards me. There was a nagging feeling that something was off-putting about the way that he looked that day. It was like he'd gotten a little longer overnight. Sandy hunched down again, like when he was walking to the door that night. He didn't come into the kitchen. I figured he must have been hungry being out in the wild for so long, but he eyed me like he was waiting for me to come a little closer, rather than touch the food. It goes without saying, but after a few moments of a staring contest between me and my unblinking dog, I called off that foolishness and called his name out loudly. Not even a flinch. I didn't want to move closer to my dog to leave the kitchen door. But this was my Sandy, and the most damage he'd ever done was eat flies. Sure enough, as I passed him, he turned, and his body swayed unnaturally. But he didn't move towards me. When I left that day, I couldn't find anything. The deer tracks in the mud were made a few days prior and went cold off naturally made trails through the woods. I couldn't hear bugs or birds or even the howl of a nearby coyote. The only sounds from miles away from the campfire site were my own breathing and the sound of crunching leaves underneath my feet. When the sun started to set, I started making my way back. But I should have just packed my shit and left. Just behind a cluster of trees, with the house just visible beyond the rise, I figured I'd found out the reason why the animals had abandoned this place. Generally, when there are mass animal deaths, that usually means that something is wrong in the area of the slaughter, and wildlife are usually smart enough to get the hell out of Dodge. Even cats are bred instinctively not to like drinking from water that is close to where their food is, because if you saw a dead animal near a stream, you'd figure the stream was tainted and find another source of water. Hundreds of squirrels were disemboweled and strewn across the grass in almost perfect circle. Most of them were skinned alive, but when I turned to heave up all the contents of my stomach, there were a few dozen that were inside out. I couldn't help but vomit repeatedly as I tried my best to walk around the circle of tiny organs and mashed up bodies. Not just over the sight, but because the smell was ungodly. I didn't know how long they'd been out there. If I'd stumbled across this sooner, I'd have left with Sandy in tow immediately afterward.
This dude, Artemis, is probably...
Gradually, the bodies stopped and delved off into a random dead squirrel here and there. The biggest thing I managed to find just a few feet off the unholy feeding ground was a deer. It looked as though something had decided to skin it alive from hide to neck and draped some kind of skin over a branch like someone was tanning the hide. I don't know how long it had been there, but it smelled like it had been dead for quite some time, despite the fact that there wasn't a single fucking fly. The head had been cut clean off just above the shoulders, and when I realized the organs had been removed, I moved from a walking pace through the forest to a jog. Thankfully, the cabin wasn't too far off. I heaved one final time, wiped my mouth off on the back of my sleeve, and looked up to the house to see Sandy. Watching me from the window. I tried to reason with myself and tell myself Sandy's odd behavior could have been trauma. I know it's stupid to think of it now, but at the time, it was the only reasonable explanation that I had to keep myself from going insane. The elongating body could have just been loneliness getting to me. Sandy had realized there was something up with this place, and the second he noticed it, I should have taken this warning and taken off back into town. Once the door was shut behind me, I started packing the food and essentials back into boxes, moving quickly to try and get my things into the truck before night came. It'd be dangerous to try and maneuver my way through the trails at night, as the hills off Kelly's Mountain were steep. And in pitch darkness, with my only companion being my headlights, it would have been easy to slide off a ravine and never be heard from again. I didn't want to stay one more night, but I had no choice. I'd gotten back to the house just moments before the sun finally receded past the horizon, and we were bathed in a navy blue sky once again. I didn't pay attention to Sandy. He just sat at his bed and watched me pack. I figured, no harm, no foul. I'd throw his stuff into the truck in the morning and be back in town before night that next day. Glancing at him for a moment, there was a passing thought that he was looking a little longer today. When I went to bed, it was a hard time getting to sleep for the next few hours. It must have been close to 4 or 5 in the morning when I finally heard it. The sound of whistling, the same whistling that I used to call my dog. I broke out into a cold sweat when I realized that whoever slaughtered those squirrels, hung the skin up, left what he didn't need, could have very well broken into my house. The door to my room didn't make a sound as I opened it slowly, thankfully. I waited a moment, listened to someone call my dog for a few more seconds before I dared poke my head out from the door frame just to get a good look at whoever it was. It could have hurt Sandy. The outside door was open. All I saw was the back half of Sandy, too long and lanky, almost coiled around the back of the door. His front half was outside. Whatever it was that had impersonated my dog was whistling slowly, calling for Sandy. And I could have sworn that it when I could have sworn that it had hunched down to the ground again and said, in the most ungodly voice I'd ever fucking heard. I closed the door just as softly as I opened it.
Goosebumps.
Ready to lose the hat and regrow the hair?
How many ads is that? 4 ads? Come on.
Opened it. I don't know how long I waited. With my back pressed up against the door, I knew I left my gun in the bag on that coat rack. I know I didn't sleep. I waited until I saw the sun break over the horizon. Then I waited some more until it must have been midday. And I finally got the balls to open the door again and make a break for the truck. I wouldn't die in that place. Sandy was gone and the door was open. His food was untouched, but the fridge was open and all the meat was gone. I didn't bother packing his stuff. I just threw my bag over my shoulder, made my way to the fort as fast as I could, turned on the ignition. I can't describe the feeling that overcame me as I realized that I'd have to leave Sandy in this place. The thought that he could be dead was never a thought in my mind. I don't think I could cope with the knowledge that whatever I allowed into my house, whatever disemboweled those animals, could have done the same to him. I made my way down the winding paths and roads as fast as I possibly could without veering off the cliffs. I felt like I was turning in circles down this labyrinth that would take me back to that house. But when I reached the pavement on the stretch of road back to town, I felt relief wash over me, thinking I was safe. Just as I was pulling off onto the cement, I felt something hard hit the back windshield, sending broken glass into the passenger seat. I only got a glimpse of the deer's decapitated head catching on unbroken glass and tumbling into the back seat. And I cried for most of the way back home, hands clenching the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I wish I could leave this off with a positive note. I wish I could tell you that I found Sandy at home waiting for me. I wish I could tell you that was the end of it, a traumatizing experience in the woods that I'd get over in time. Last night, I found it hard to sleep. I kept replaying the entirety of my trip to Kelly's Mountain in my head. I figured I wouldn't be sleeping for a while and laid there, listening to the wind through my open window. I could have sworn I heard the whistle I used to call my dog come from the forest edge. Go on trips with your dog, guys. I advise you don't let them out of your sight for too long. What comes back might not be your dog.
Goosebumps, man. Yeah, just the way that he puts the audio and he's built so much atmosphere rather than just a regular reading of these stories, which are creepy on their own, but the way that he adds the effects in, it's so well done. So yeah, those are 2 common stories with the creepy woods theme, and honestly, this one had a little bit more to it than the Goatman story. Looking back at it now, and yeah, kind of like and like skinwalkers too, like Wendigo skinwalkers, whatever you call them. So let me know which story you enjoyed the most. That was a fun time. So yeah, I'll be back with another album reaction either sometime later today or tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. Peace. I'm gonna get it to at least 55 minutes. Yeah, let me know what else you want me to react to and all that, and always looking to do new stuff. So, thank you.